Hey ladies, this is Mocha Mommy here bringing you another video, and this one is going to go over romance and finance. I'm going to elaborate on some subjects that I had touched on in earlier videos and also just kind of go over some of the rhetoric that's been reverberating around YouTube about how there might be some ignorance and a lot of false narratives going on around things about hypergamy, alimony, divorce, community property. And even though I don't like to discuss celebrity gossip, I'll be using just a few of them as case studies where I can give you a clearer example of how these romantic situations can sometimes impact you financially and how you can best navigate through those situations.
Now, I'm not going to be one of those people who are going to tell you how you can best make a whole bunch of money from divorce, because I think that marriage is sacred and I don't think it should be something that should be taken for granted. There are other channels for that show you how to have these transactional relationships, and this is not one of them. So feel free to check some of those out. And if those are something you're interested in, you guys can put it in the comment sections to see how you can have a more transactional relationship. But that's not something I agree with because that's not my value system. But what I will say is that I've just been seeing around YouTube, a lot of people are just not really aware of what, power couple dynamics and of the financial implications of marriage because unfortunately not a lot of Black people are married, which is really unfortunate. So I'll just kind of go over a couple of terms that I've looked up. A lot of it are from private law firms because divorce laws vary so much from state to state and from region to region and from couple to couple. Now, while celebrity gossip is not my forte, being as though I'm at 600 subscribers and I am often asked about romance, finance, the financial implications of marriage and divorce, I'm just going to go in this video, just kind of give you a basic overview of certain legal terms and things that maybe you should know when it comes to embarking on these unions. Now, again, I don't really do celebrity gossip, but some of the things that came to mind was when it came to Nicole Young and Dr. Dre's divorce. It just let me know that perhaps there is a need for a little bit of financial literacy education around marriage and divorce.
Now, when it comes to negotiating the licensing agreement with Dr. Dre and Jimmy Lovin for the Beats by Dre headphones, or all the copyrights and royalties and masters that were concerned with Aftermath Records, the rights of discovery contract with Eminem and 50 Cent, having successful college graduated children who got into some of the most competitive schools throughout the country. It really helps to have a lawyer wife by your side. We have to remember Dr. Dre barely graduated high school and is a chain weed smoker, which we know could have a long-term effect on cognitive abilities. Having a lawyer wife at your side could be really instrumental in creating a level of success and making that power couple dynamic happen. Now, where I saw a lot of financial illiteracy was that people were just assuming that this stay-at-home mom was just some kind of gold digger trophy wife, not realizing that she was very instrumental in helping him become the successful businessman he is today. In fact, if you look at the members of NWA, Dre by far is the most successful one.
Now, one of the things that was kind of going around YouTube that let me know that there is definitely a need for some financial literacy was, why didn't Dre have a prenup? She's asking for this money because Dre was too stupid to get a prenup. Well, the reality is there could have very well been a prenup for all we know. A prenup is a prenuptial agreement that kind of keeps your assets that you have acquired before marriage separate. So in case of the dissolution of marriage, those assets are then not subject to community property laws. So if Nicole Young was in private practice or anything that she earned as a lawyer, any assets that she may have secured from her ex-husband, Seidel Treat, who was the father of her first son. So whatever she acquired before Dre, she would have had protected in case of a divorce. Dr. Dre, anything that he had acquired during his days with NWA would not be subject to divorce. But any business ventures, any property they acquired, any assets they ascertained or built together, any wealth that they built together, stocks, bonds, retirements, any insurance products that they built together would then be subject to the community property laws of that state, which is California. Also, if Nicole has any kind of proof that she had to give up her career or used her career to support any of his acquiring of assets, then she would also have a higher stake in their community property. Now, as far as alimony, in order to be granted alimony in most states, there has to be a pretty significant earning difference between the two spouses, okay? Meaning that the higher earning spouse has to earn 40% more than the lower earning spouse. So, in my case, since I'm back working full time, even though my spouse is still the primary breadwinner, I would not be eligible for alimony because of how close our salaries are. So when you hear these manosphere dudes talking about, well, if you're a high value man and you marry a girl from Chick-fil-A who's 15 years younger than you, actually that's a recipe for alimony. So don't correct them, let them do it. Okay. So, yeah, leave them alone. So, alimony also, when you listen to the women who are on these gold digging websites or gold digging vlogs that they have, don't listen to them either. Because typically alimony is only granted in less than 20% of divorces, because most people marry people who they're on par with financially. And also, alimony typically is temporary. It's not a lifelong allocation where you're getting a check every day for decades. So alimony usually in most states, it's for like a definitive time period, maybe while you have a special needs kids in school, or if you guys share a lease or any kinds of names are on joint pieces of property like car loans. My older sister ended up getting alimony from her ex-husband for a short period of time because they owned a home together, and he paid her alimony to cover the mortgage until the home was finally sold at a profit, and then they had to split the profit. So again, alimony is not necessarily this lifelong allotment that you can cash in on. Now, Nicole Young is probably asking for an exorbitant amount of alimony simply because she knows that it's not going to be some kind of lifelong allotment, especially with grown children. She probably is asking for some things that might have to do with her contribution to the businesses, to the family, or maybe anything that any assets that she may have had to forego while being married or raising children with Dre. And she's probably asking for such an exorbitant amount simply because she knows that she's not going to get all of that, and it's probably not going to be a lifetime allotment. Post-nuptial agreements can also be pretty complex, that vary from state to state, couple to couple, and condition to condition. One of the things they had suggested would be good uses of post-nuptial agreements is if there was a large inheritance that one of the spouses had inherited during the course of the marriage, and it would just protect those assets, especially if they're legacy assets, like things like land or important family heirlooms, that they just wouldn't want subject to community property and divorce. Also, it could clearly delineate responsibilities and asset sharing as far as what happens if the couple has a business together and then the union dissolves, how would they handle the business? So again, these things are so relative, and it's really up to the couple on how they want to divide those assets. Now, even though I don't condone divorce or separation just because of my faith background, I do see there's some cases where divorce was quote unquote done right. So one of the primary examples would be Jeff and Mackenzie Bezos. Jeff and Mackenzie Bezos met while working at a venture capital firm. He was a hedge fund manager. She was a hedge fund researcher. They both were Princeton alum, and Jeff made about $350,000 a year. And Mackenzie also earned pretty close to six figures. So when they got together, Jeff Bezos moved the family to Seattle, and they began Amazon, where Mackenzie Bezos became the primary breadwinner while Jeff Bezos started the company with some startup money from his family and also some of the family's savings. Now, Amazon started by selling books. So it was Mackenzie Bezos's experience as a creative writer and her Princeton literature degree that helped her to curate book lists so that Amazon could have repeat and returning customers to buy books. So if you like book A, then you will get book B. That became the basis for the algorithm that Amazon uses today to become the behemoth it is. Knowing how to curate lists from people who shop and buy one product, and then they can recommend a series of other products for you. Also, Mackenzie Bezos was also very instrumental in using her connections in the venture capital world to make sure that Jeff Bezos had enough VC and investment capital to run his business, even when Amazon was having negative quarters. So you have to understand that this was very much a joint partnership. So when we saw her exorbitant, I guess, if you want to say alimony or one-time payment, I think it was over $650 billion. We basically saw that because she was very much a part of the Amazon empire that he built. So again, this is another case of divorce done right. In my opinion, I think that if you get with a spouse and you don't see yourselves as an entity greater than you are as separate individuals, there really is no point in marrying that person, for the man or for the woman. So if you don't see yourself growing and gaining with this person financially, spiritually, emotionally, I don't think there's a point in it. So I think that these two did a good job as far as maybe keeping their divorce from being a lot of tabloid fodder, protecting their children's best interest in a lot of this, even though I'm sure there are things that they both wish they could do differently. I don't know. I see this story as something that could have been, I don't know. I guess see something that could have been positive. Now, ladies, don't think that a prenup can't benefit you, okay? Prenups have definitely benefited women in cases of divorce. Russell Crowe and Danielle Spencer is a primary example. Part of their prenuptial agreement was just to have a settlement, where as opposed to having long, lengthy, drawn out court proceedings, Danielle would just take a specific dollar amount and just bounce and have a quiet, private divorce, which was great in her case because she had 2 children to think about. And Russell Crowe at the time had a raging substance abuse problem. Also, we could see, depending on where the divorce happened, again, this was overseas and laws vary state to state, and they also vary overseas. She was in Australia, he was in the United States, and there was rumors that there was some infidelity on her part. So if she lived in kind of like a fault divorce state, she didn't have to worry about forfeiting any assets because everything was kind of guaranteed in her prenup. Another one was Katie Holmes and Tom Cruise. Okay, that was another divorce. Quick, quiet, under the table, with a definitive settlement amount that she would get. And then she was kind of free of Tom Cruise, his hold on the industry, the thumb of Scientology, and she just got her check and just cashed it and just went quietly about her life with her daughter. One thing also that a lot of men don't realize is that when it comes to divorce, they keep thinking that it's the woman that's railroading them and that's greedy because she filed. Nobody realizes how shady family court and divorce lawyers are. There are many, many women who are in very difficult financial situations because their ex-partner, ex-spouse is delinquent on child support or alimony. But you never see a lawyer in a bad financial position because he didn't get paid. Many times, lawyers convince men to liquidate their assets and to hide it in order to hide it from their wife in divorce proceedings. What that does is it just means that the man will have more liquid capital and then the lawyer can just take his share off the top. It also means that your children won't be able to inherit those assets. So things like land, if a lot of your spouse-to-be, if a lot of their resources are things like heirlooms, land, stocks, things that are not very liquid, you may want to make sure that those things are secured in a prenup. Okay, you want to make sure that that land and all those heirlooms are secured in a prenup because you don't want your potential ex-spouse to liquidate those assets for it to be in the hand of a lawyer. So you want to make sure that those assets are secured for your children and your children's future, and then create a will to make sure that your children will in fact inherit those properties. Now, another really complex issue when it comes to divorce and dissolution of marriages are fault versus no fault divorces. Now, a lot of states are no fault divorce state. Look up the laws in your state to find out if it is a no fault divorce state. And if you are in a default divorce state, what are your rights and what are your obligations to file a fault divorce? Texas is a fault divorce state. So when my friend Kenya went through her divorce, her spouse had committed infidelity. So what did that mean was that she had to spend a long time collecting receipts, which was really smart on her part because typically a lawyer could have charged upwards of $389 an hour to collect those receipts. But she spent it collecting those receipts herself, as well as resolving a lot of their mutual debt, making sure that cars, credit cards were paid off, and also that their home was going to be up for sale so that those assets could be split. So when she filed her fault divorce, she had all the receipts, pictures, text messages, testimony from the women. So this way, the lawyer was not going through a very expensive investigation with private investigators that would cost her more out of pocket. But also, Wendy Williams filed a fault divorce, right? People are wondering, why are you staying with Kevin Hunter? Because you know he's cheating on you. You know he's doing you dirty. Why? You want to make sure the baby is born and then take that baby's DNA to prove paternity, therefore a fault divorce. This is why Wendy was living in New York and got divorced in New Jersey. Fault divorce. No fault divorce, who does that benefit? Originally, do you remember the old trope about dad went out for a pack of cigarettes and never came back? Okay, so a no-fault divorce would allow that woman who's been abandoned to file for divorce without the man who abandoned her signing it. A no-fault divorce would also help domestic violence victims who don't want to say that the cause of their divorce was domestic violence for their safety. So fault and no-fault divorces really depends on the couple, the situation, and why the woman is filing for divorce. Another way that some of these really wealthy celebrity wives are cashing in when it comes to divorce is non-disclosure agreements. It's when wives who've had prenups can still cash in by keeping their husband's dirty laundry a secret and not selling it to a tabloid press. This is how Elin Norgren, is Tiger Woods' ex-wife, is one of the richest women in Florida. Not necessarily because she got divorced in a community property, no fault divorce state, but also because she kept her mouth shut. The whole world saw Tiger Woods as this boy next door, perfect angel, really good guy, but she knew he was a dog, and she married him knowing he was a dog. And so then by the time the Nike golf contract gets renewed, by the time he wears another Masters jacket, by the time the lucrative contract with Gillette, now all of a sudden she's indignant and wants to start smashing windows. You see what I'm saying? That was a very strategic move on her part. So, and the kids are in school. The kids are of school age, so you're not spending a ton of money on nannies. So again, this was just a really strategic move on her part. Tiger Woods' failure was not to get the mistresses to sign the non-disclosure agreements, and they certainly cashed in on his indiscretion. So just to let you know that there are women out here playing the long game. I saw it a lot in the military where women would know to marry guys who didn't have a lot of integrity, and they would do it on purpose. Because they know that after 10 years in a wake up, that's the thing, 10 years, and that they were entitled to have that guy's retirement. So this is a very strategic move that a lot of women make on men, black men in particular, because a black woman, in my opinion, they would always complain about how they gave them such a hard time. They were always so nosy, and they were always so dramatic by, causing a scene when a guy was caught cheating, but not realizing that women of other races knew that too, and then they were just using it to cash in. I remember being a student at Howard, being a part of a campus ministry, and there were some students at Georgetown University that were part of the campus ministry. One of the girls was dating an athlete, and clearly this guy did not have a lot of integrity. He was pretty sloppy. So one of her friends advised her, like, hey, isn't your, quote unquote boyfriend, the black woman was saying, like, you need to get rid of this guy. Get rid of this guy. This guy is awful. He's cheating on you. Whereas the white women were saying to this girl, no, he's being recruited by the Detroit Pistons. What you do is you go to Detroit with him. You find out, where is the Pistons practice facilities? Where do the Detroit Red Wings go to party and eat lunch? Who else does his manager represent? And can you get an internship with his management company? You find out what hotels are the away team staying at. You stick in this and you get all the intelligence you need. Then once you can mingle with bigger and better, more wealthier athletes, then you bring up the cheating and then you dump him. You see, there's women who are out here playing the long game. Is this the case with, Derek Jackson and his wife? I have no idea. But I'm just saying that when you see these cheating scandals, a lot of times it's a woman who knows she has a man with no integrity and she's playing the long game. Rather than tell you how to best get a divorce, my suggestion is to learn really good communication skills so that you can stay together and don't have to deal with divorce. And even if you do get divorced, if you have good communication, you guys can, you can pretty much decide on how to navigate that situation. So here's a couple of podcasts I recommend. Number one is the How Married Are You podcast. This is with Belief in Fatherhood and his wife. This is a couple who has a big family, who had just made decisions for themselves to just how they're going to navigate their marriage. And then you have Halise and the Stumblewell podcast. This is a childless couple who decides that they want to navigate their marriage childless, and they have a lot of similar educational goals and a lot in common, and they communicate really well. Another couple would be The Love Hour with Kevin and Melissa. This is a couple who've been together for a really long time, and they have some great strategies, and they're really, really entertaining. And I think that they give pretty good advice for being a married couple. And then there's also a new favorite podcast of mine, which is The Lines Between the Stars. This is a newlywed couple who basically, they have really good communication. And I think the guy, Sam, the husband in the situation, I think that he's really straightforward and direct, which is something that I know I appreciate a lot, and is something that sometimes we as Black women don't get a lot in our culture, like direct, straightforward communication. So that's why that's constructive and helpful. That's not meant to kind of tear you down or have any kind of low-key shade attached to it. So I think that you'll appreciate all 4 of these podcasts, all 4 of these couples, and all 4 of the ways that they communicate so that you can just be a better wife to your partner and better vet partners for yourself because you have those really good communication skills. Marriage is probably one of the most important financial decisions you will ever make. So make sure that you're aware of the laws in your state, whether you're getting married or in the process of divorce. Don't be rash, think about it carefully, and make sure you're keeping the lines of communication open. Do I think prenups are a good idea? Absolutely. Do I think postnuptials are a good idea? For some people, in some situations, sure. Do I think that it's a good idea to keep joint or separate accounts? That really depends on the couple. Do I think it's a good idea for each spouse to keep a certain percentage of their salary in a separate account? That I agree with. You just never really know, especially if there's a sudden accident, illness, or injury. You want to make sure that you have all the access you need to have. Also, I think that because marriage always evolves with children, jobs, job losses, job gains, promotions, stock, equity, land, property, illness, injury, always make sure that you're in communication. So just to make sure that you guys are making the best financial decisions for yourselves. So no one can really tell you how to do that. It's really just up to you to experience. So my suggestion is just to do your own research and make sure you're keeping those lines of communication open with your future spouse, your current spouse, or if you guys are married and considering a dissolution, find out your rights and responsibilities. This is Mocha Mommy, and I'll see you in the next video.